Put yourself in position to win big on Kentucky Derby Day with the power of daily racing form. Visit shop.drf.com and get past performances, expert picks, betting strategies, clock reports, and more. Again, that's shop.drf.com. Dan Illman, Mike Beer, race number 5 at Churchill Downs on Kentucky Oaks Friday is the Grade 2 Alysheba, $600,000 for older horses going 1 mile and a 16th. Before we take a look at the entry field, please subscribe to the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. We got Triple Crown season coming up, and we'll have tremendous analysis from all of our various correspondents. Here is the field for the Grade 2 Alysheba. We're going 1 mile and a 16th. It's the rematch between West Will Power and Art Collector, but Rich Strike, last year's Kentucky Derby winner, will make his 4-year-old debut, Mike.
Yeah, Rich Strike adds a little intrigue here. The race still goes through those 2 horses that you referenced at the Open, though, Dan. Art Collector, West Will Power, they're both in really good form. They both have really good tactical speed from inside posts. So I think the race goes through them, but there are other interesting horses in here.
West Will Power has speed and is sharp. We throw up the Timeform US pace projector. Timeform US believes West Will Power can make the lead. Art Collector, however, is far from a slow horse. While he's won from off the pace, an argument could be made that he's even more effective when he makes the lead. Do you think A, Junior Alvarado is going to send from the inside post, and B, is he fast enough to clear West Will Power?
I think he's clearly fast enough if they want it. It'll be interesting to see what Junior elects to do this time, Dan. They've been comfortable in his first 2 starts this year anyway. They've been comfortable sort of taking a hold of him and trying to get a tracking position. I would argue that it sort of worked against them in their most recent start, but it worked really well off the layoff at Gulfstream.
If the 2 morning line favorites hook up in a prolonged pace battle, note that Rich Strike's Chicklet, the number 3, has the LP flag designation, which means he has the fastest late pace rating from Timeform US. Let's start things off with Art Collector. He's a multiple Grade 1 stakes winner. He's banked over $4 million in his career. He's just a very likable horse, and he showed he can still run at the age of 6 when he won 2 starts back in the Pegasus World Cup. His race last time out, he was beaten by West Will Power. But you're right, Mike, he was kind of down inside. He was pocketed, and I think he likes to be more of a free-running type, whether on the lead or outside of horses in the clear.
Yeah, I mean, listen, maybe he wasn't going to beat West Will Power last time anyway, because West Will Power ran really well. It was just when you watch especially the first run through the stretch there, Dan, it's kind of confusing what Alvarado was doing there, because this horse was forward. They certainly could have gone to the lead, and they just sort of let a long shot go and elected to sit behind that horse for some reason. To me, it made no sense. He was only second best there regardless, but he's better than that. He could get a different trip this time. His good race obviously makes him really, really tough in here. And I don't think it'd be surprising at all if he was able to beat West Will Power this time.
His Pegasus was a super performance, a 107 Beyer speed figure, a good second behind West Will Power with yet another triple-digit Beyer. He's been good for a very long time for the great Bill Mott. The number 2 is Last Samurai. And this horse, while he was beaten by Art Collector in the Pegasus World Cup, I thought ran a sneaky good race for 4th, and since then has done nothing but nice things at Oaklawn Park. 2 graded stakes wins, and then a very close second in this race, the Oaklawn Handicap. Now, he's sort of in a tight spot here at the 3/16 pole, down towards the inside. Eventually, he's going to squeeze his way through and forge to a short lead, and it takes a pretty good horse, Proxy, to run him down in the shadow of the wire.
He's just going to miss here. He runs really well again. He did overall. I thought he got a good trip in. It was a little tight for him coming through down on the rail in the upper stretch, but when you watch the head on, he had plenty of room there in the late stages. Certainly had a chance to win that race, just missed at the end, but it was another good performance for him. He benefits if the 2 favorites in here, Art Collector, West Will Power, if they get more aggressive this time and sort of hook it up a little bit earlier, it benefits this horse, and it maybe benefits him more than anybody else. He could easily win here.
That last race was at 1 mile and an 1/8. He beat West Will Power 3 starts back, going 1 mile and a 16th. He comes into this race for Mr. Lucas following 3 consecutive triple-digit Beyer performances. The number 3 is Rich Strike, last year's upset winner of the Kentucky Derby, and he hasn't won since, although he runs well at Churchill Downs. Second in the Lucas Classic, going 1 mile and an 1/8. 3 starts back. Didn't really do much behind West Will Power last time out in the Clark. The Connections wanted to run him on Jeff Ruby's Stakes Day in the Kentucky Cup Classic. They said he grabbed a little bit of a quarter, so he might be slightly behind schedule. And from a pace standpoint, he might need some help.
He's going to need those two favorites, I think, to do some racing a little bit earlier in this race, perhaps. Then we'll see if it sets up well for him. Listen, you mentioned that it was a big upset, obviously, when he won the Derby last year. He didn't win after that, but it's to his credit that he ran some fast races through the second half of last year. I mean, he didn't win the Travers, he didn't win the Lucas Classic, he didn't win the Breeders' Cup Classic, but they're fast races. He ran pretty well in those, and he could certainly take a step forward at 4.
No, it's a good point. He proved that the Derby really wasn't a fluke because he was very competitive in some tough spots. He's fresh for this race. Maybe a mile and a 16th is a little bit sharp for him. Maybe this is just a starting off point, but I'm sure the fans would like to see Rich Strike make a strong late bid. West Will Power is the number 4. He'd always been a solid horse for Brad Cox. He really exploded last time out in that New Orleans Classic, and he also got a very good trip. He parked himself outside a ridiculous long shot that couldn't win, took over the lead, turning for home, and he had more than enough to hold off Art Collector. His speed gives him the ability to work out those sort of trips. Flavien Prat's going to have him up close, if not outright on the lead again.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. He could easily make the lead here. We'll see what he does, because if nothing else, Dan, in that most recent start last time you mentioned, there was just a horse on the lead who couldn't possibly win. But West Willpower was pretty comfortable sitting off of him, and I think that's a good sign, because the race 2 back at Oaklawn, that was not the case when they tried to rate him with Rosario. This horse got really headstrong early and wound up pulling himself into a little bit of a duel there. And I think it worked against him. Last Samurai sort of took advantage there. If he can settle more comfortably going forward, it just gives him that many more options, and he's already really good.
Smile Happy is very progressive, and he's a kind of horse at a price that makes sense, especially stretching out slightly in distance. This is a horse that did some really good things as a 3-year-old, running in the Bluegrass, running in the Risen Star, competitive in those races. I like that they gave him plenty of time after the Kentucky Derby to grow up. His first race off the layoff against Allowance Company at Oaklawn Park was very good. And last time out, we thought it was a little odd that they cut him back to a mile, a distance that might be a little bit shorter than his best. We're going to watch that race right now. It's the Oaklawn Mile. The pace was solid in here, and he's going to come with a run to eventually finish 3rd. I just wonder if he needs a little more ground.
Yeah, maybe a little more ground helps him. I also, Dan, we picked up this replay at the top of the stretch when he's already clear, and he's going to make a little bit of a run here. I did not like the position that this horse was in around that final turn of that race. They just sort of kept him down on the inside, and as that field sort of bunched up there around the final turn, he just had nowhere to go. He got shuffled back out of position, and then he made that run that we saw there when we picked up the replay. I think before that, though, he had a legitimate excuse in that race. Like you, I thought he looked really good winning off of the layoff. He could easily improve again here. He's going to have to in the face of the 2 favorites, but it's certainly possible. He's an interesting horse in here.
He was a graded stakes winner at Churchill Downs as a 2-year-old. Always had a lot of promise, still has some upside. Nice price on the tote, 8-1, facing a tough field. Milliken stepping up in class, but he's stepping up sharp. Let's watch the number 6 Milliken's most recent race. Going this distance at Gulfstream with the short stretch. He got right up close to the pace, and he's going to hold off the closer at the end. The 3rd place finisher of this race would come back to win a grade 3 at Gulfstream with a 98 buyer. So it kind of validates the solid figure Milliken earned.
He certainly has run pretty well in his last 2 starts since they, elected to stretch him out again. They had mostly kept him to sprinting earlier on, but they went the mile 2 back. He won from off the pace easily. They went 2 turns last time. He won again. He's certainly headed in the right direction. Really tough spot here.
It's nice to see that the 7 Giant Games seems to be back in peak form and peak fitness, because you remember he was 3rd in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile way back in 2021, and he tried to get on the Kentucky Derby trail. He had 2 dismal performances, a 3-year-old, and then they stopped on him, but he's now had 3 starts at 4, and here's his most recent race. I know it's only a first-level allowance, but it's a step in the right direction. A 93 buyer speed figure, a career best. He'll get up for 2nd.
Yeah, only 2nd best here, but you're right, though. At least, he's back in regular racing now as a 4-year-old, and it feels like he's sort of slowly working his way forward. We'll see how much more he has to give, because he's going to have to give a lot more against this field. Then I remember really liking him as a 2-year-old. He totally bombed in his 2 starts last year. I hope he can find his way back. I don't think I could bet him against this field.
he just has the misfortune of facing not only one good horse, but maybe 3 or 4 in here, but one perhaps to follow down the road. Let's take a look at our top selections for the Alysheba. Mike's going with Art Collector. Why not, considering his overall class lines, his good form, his good tactical speed? I think West Willpower, his outside post gives him a little bit of an edge. If he wants to go to the front and Junior wants to be a little passive like last time, he can make the lead, and if not, he showed last time he could sit.
Yeah, agreed. I don't really have a big argument against him then, even though I didn't pick him. I just thought that maybe he'd be favored this time. Of course, Art Collector last time was odds on when West Willpower beat him. Maybe it'll be a little different here. Art Collector will be a little bit of a better price. I put him on top. Again, I think he could easily turn the tables. I almost went with Smile Happy. I put him second.
Mike's going 1-5-4-2. I'll go 4-1-2-6. Don't want to give Mr. Lucas short shrift. He's gotten the 2 Last Samurai in very good form. We'll see which Rich Strike shows up in his seasonal debut. It's the Alysheba, the first of many graded stakes races on Kentucky Oaks Friday. Good luck.